Police lights flashed blue and red against the windows of what used to be my home. Neighbors lined the street, whispering, pretending not to stare. My sister stood on the porch with her arms crossed, a smug grin plastered on her face. She had called them, again. "This isn't your house anymore," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the night air. "You've got 48 hours, that's it." The officers shifted uncomfortably, one of them glancing at me as if to say, "I'm sorry." My bags weren't even packed. My parents' words still rang in my ears like a verdict. "Your sister owns the house now. You need to leave." I looked up at her, at that satisfied smirk. She thought she'd finally broken me, that I'd walk away with nothing but shame. But what she didn't know was that I had already started collecting every piece of truth that would turn her little victory into her downfall. And when the reckoning came, no one on this street would forget it. Police lights flashed blue and red against the windows of what used to be my home. Neighbors lined the street, whispering, pretending not to stare. My sister stood on the porch with her arms crossed, a smug grin plastered on her face. She had called them, again. "This isn't your house anymore," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the night air. "You've got 48 hours, that's it." The officers shifted uncomfortably, one of them glancing at me as if to say, "I'm sorry." My bags weren't even packed. My parents' words still rang in my ears like a verdict. "Your sister owns the house now. You need to leave." I looked up at her, at that satisfied smirk. She thought she'd finally broken me, that I'd walk away with nothing but shame. But what she did, after that dinner, the tension only grew sharper. It was as if my sister had tasted blood and wanted more. She began small. Snide comments slipped into conversations. "Don't touch that, you'll just break it." Or, "Are you ever going to move out? Or are you Mom and Dad's permanent charity case?" I told myself to ignore her, to rise above it. But silence only seemed to fuel her. Soon she went further. She'd leave the door locked when she knew I was coming home from work, just so I'd be stuck outside knocking while she pretended not to hear. She'd invite her friends over and parade them through my room, laughing at my old posters, calling my bed a storage closet. And my parents? They didn't stop her. Sometimes I wondered if they even noticed. The isolation started to sink in. Neighbors I'd waved to for years suddenly avoided eye contact. One even muttered under his breath, "Heard you're causing trouble in the house." I stood frozen, realizing she'd been talking about me beyond those walls. Nights grew heavier. I'd lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the thud of her heels pacing down the hallway. My chest tightened, breath coming shallow. I could feel my pulse in my temples, like a drumbeat reminding me, "You're trapped." Work didn't bring relief either. I showed up tired, shoulders slumped, mind foggy from sleepless nights. A coworker finally asked, "Are you okay? You look worn out." I wanted to lie, but the truth slipped out in fragments. "It's family stuff." Bad stuff. That was the first time I said it out loud. And once I did, the weight didn't feel as crushing. One evening, after another shouting match with my sister, this one about laundry of all things, I stepped outside just to breathe. The night air was cool and the cicadas hummed steady in the trees. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a message from an old friend, Sam, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey, don't know why, but you popped into my mind. How's life treating you?" I stared at the screen, stunned. For weeks I'd felt invisible, unheard. And suddenly, here was someone asking how I was. Not what I owed, not what I failed at. Just me. We met up for coffee a few days later. At first I kept it light, talking about work and weather. But Sam leaned in, eyes steady, and said, "You don't have to sugarcoat it. I can tell you're carrying something heavy." The dam broke, words spilled out. The favoritism, the humiliation, the way my sister had turned the house into a battlefield. I half expected him to roll his eyes or tell me I was overreacting, But he didn't. He nodded slowly and said, "That's abuse. And you don't deserve it." The word hit me like a spark. Abuse. No one in my family would ever call it that. To them, it was just sibling rivalry. But hearing Sam say it out loud made me realize I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. For the first time, I wasn't alone in this fight. What I didn't know then was that Sam's words would be the beginning of a chain reaction, one that would take every weapon my sister thought she had and turn them back on her. And soon she'd realize the game was changing. The shift came on a gray Thursday afternoon. I was sitting at the kitchen table, bills spread out in front of me, when my parents walked in with a folder. They didn't sit. They didn't smile. Dad cleared his throat. "We've decided," he said, sliding the folder toward me. "The deed for the house is in your sister's name now." My stomach dropped. "What?" Mom avoided my eyes. "She's more responsible. She's ready for this kind of commitment. You need to figure your life out." I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I opened the folder. Inside was the paperwork, signed, stamped, official. Everything I'd contributed, the repairs, the bills, the sweat, erased with a few signatures. My sister leaned against the doorway, arms folded, smirking like she'd just won a chess match. "So," she said lightly, "you've got 48 hours to get your stuff out." The words echoed, sharp and cold. 48 hours. Like I was a tenant, not a son. That night, police lights flashed outside the house. She'd called them, claiming I was refusing to leave. The officers were polite, almost apologetic, but their presence made it clear she had the power now. For the first time, I felt cornered. Truly cornered. But panic has a strange way of clearing the fog. As I lay awake in the dark, something clicked. I remembered every receipt I'd kept, every bill I'd paid, every photo of repairs I'd made on this house. Quietly, without realizing it, I'd built a record, a story written in numbers and ink. And there was more. Buried in an old drawer was the original will from my grandmother, the one that left the house to the family, not to one person. My parents had rewritten history, but I still had a piece of truth they couldn't erase. The next morning, as my sister strutted through the kitchen bragging on the phone to a friend, I slipped that will into a folder of my own. My hand steadied as I pressed it flat. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. She thought she'd cut off every exit, that I was trapped. But she hadn't realized every humiliation, every betrayal had forced me to document, to prepare, to survive. And now, the very evidence I'd quietly gathered was going to become my weapon. I closed the folder, set it on the table, and whispered to myself, "She thinks this is over. It isn't. Not even close. Because if she wanted war, she was about to get one. And I wasn't coming to the battlefield empty-handed. The days after I found that felt different. I still lived under her roof, still heard her voice dripping with smug superiority, but now there was a current of quiet strength beneath my exhaustion. She didn't see it. She thought the game was already won, which is why she escalated. Rumors began trickling through the neighborhood. Mrs. Parker, who had once asked me to mow her lawn, crossed the street when she saw me coming. A coworker pulled me aside and whispered, "Your sister said you've been violent at home." Is that true? Violent. The word hit like a slap. She was rewriting my story for the world. I wasn't the son who kept the lights on, the brother who fixed the leaky pipes. I was the problem child, the unstable one, the failure. And it worked. Invitations dried up. Relatives stopped calling. Even my parents treated me like a shadow in the house, walking past me as if I no longer existed. At night, the weight pressed down on my chest. Sleep came in restless bursts. I'd wake drenched in sweat, teeth clenched from grinding. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like enemy territory. But unlike before, I wasn't just enduring it. I was recording everything, every insult, every locked door, every fake story she spread. I wrote it down, dated it, filed it away, screenshots of texts, voicemails, receipts. The folder grew thicker by the day, the weight of it solid in my hands. The symbolic objects took on new meaning too. That old photo album she flaunted, I managed to scan copies of every page the night she left it unattended. Each image, my childhood birthdays, Dad teaching me how to ride a bike, became proof that my story mattered, that I existed. And the will? I had it tucked safely away, scanned, backed up, protected. It was more than paper. It was the anchor I clung to while the storm raged. Sam kept reminding me, "You're not crazy. You're preparing. This is what warriors do before battle, warrior." The words settled into my bones. For so long, I'd been the peacekeeper, the quiet one. But peace had been stripped away. Now, all that was left was the fight. My sister must have sensed the shift because she started to crack. Her voice rose sharper during arguments. Her laughs carried a nervous edge. One night, I overheard her snapping on the phone. "Why isn't this working? Why isn't he gone yet?" That's when I knew she was losing control. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't fighting her games with more games. I was building a case. Every day, every hour, I grew stronger in silence, while her empire of lies wobbled on shaky ground. The neighbors might have believed her. My parents might have chosen her side. But the truth was patient, and the truth was mine. And as I looked at the growing stack of evidence on my desk, I realized something with chilling clarity. The day of reckoning was coming, and no one could stop it. The confrontation came on a humid Saturday afternoon. My sister had arranged a family meeting, though really it was her stage. My parents sat stiff on the living room couch, arms folded, while a few aunts and uncles hovered nearby, lured by whispers of finally resolving the problem. I walked in with the folder under my arm. She started before I even sat down. "This has gone on long enough. He refuses to leave. He's freeloading, causing problems, even scaring the neighbors. We can't live like this anymore." Gasps, murmurs. My mother's lips tightened. My father shook his head. I could feel their eyes pressing on me, the weight of judgment. For a heartbeat, I almost faltered. But then I looked at my sister's face, smug, certain, and something inside me steadied. I set the folder on the coffee table and spoke calmly. "You've told a lot of stories. Tonight, I'm telling mine." I slid the first document across, receipts of bills I'd paid, electricity, water, repairs, each page stamped, dated. Silence. Then came the photos. Me fixing the roof, repainting the walls, unclogging the pipes while she posed for selfies. My aunt leaned forward, eyes narrowing. My father shifted uncomfortably. Finally, I pulled out the will. The room went still as I placed it in the center of the table. "This house," I said slowly, "was meant for the family. Not for one person. Not for her alone." My sister's smile cracked. "That's not real," she hissed. I met her glare. "It is. Original copy, signed by Grandma, before you twisted everything to your advantage." Her hand trembled as she reached for it, then pulled back. Everyone saw. The silence was suffocating. I could hear the tick of the old wall clock, the hum of the air conditioner, the shallow breaths of my parents as they realized what they had allowed. I looked around the room, meeting every pair of eyes. My voice didn't shake. "You've been told I'm a burden, a freeloader, a problem. But the truth is, I've been the one holding this place together, and I'm done being erased." My sister's face crumbled, the confidence drained, leaving only panic. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. For once, she had nothing. I closed the folder with finality. "I don't want apologies. I want change." The words hung in the air like a gavel striking wood. And in that silence, for the first time in years, I felt the ground shift beneath me, not as the unwanted shadow in my own home, but as someone standing tall, undeniable, unshaken. After that night, the house was never the same. The silence lingered long after everyone left, but it wasn't the heavy silence of shame anymore. It was the silence of something breaking open. My parents avoided my eyes for days, moving quietly around the house, as if unsure of which side they even stood on. For once, my father's lectures about responsibility stopped, and my mother's sighs carried guilt instead of dismissal. But the biggest change was in my sister. The smirk that had been her armor vanished. She still tried, in small, desperate ways, rolling her eyes, muttering under her breath, but the power was gone. Every word she spoke now landed flat, because the truth was out in the open. The mask had cracked, and everyone had seen what was underneath. Rumors in the neighborhood shifted too. The same people who crossed the street to avoid me began offering stiff nods, then small conversations. A few even apologized. It didn't erase the sting of their silence, but it reminded me, lies have short lives, and truth always outlasts them. I didn't stay in that house forever. Piece by piece, I built my way out. A new job gave me stability. Sam became more than just a friend. He became my anchor, someone who reminded me daily that my worth wasn't something my family could measure. With his encouragement, I found a small apartment across town. The first night I slept there, in a space that was mine and mine alone, the quiet felt like freedom. But I didn't leave empty-handed. On my last day in the house, I carried out two things: the folder of evidence, now sealed and safe, and a copy of the photo album I had scanned. I framed one picture in particular, me and my dad, grease on our hands, smiling beside the old car we'd fixed together. For years, my sister had tried to erase my part of the story. Now it hung on my new wall, unshakable proof that I belonged. The symbolic objects had transformed. The folder of evidence wasn't just paperwork, it was my shield, the record that saved me when words weren't enough. And that photo album, once a weapon of favoritism, had become my reminder that memories are mine to claim, not gifts someone else can grant or take away. As weeks turned to months, I found something unexpected blooming inside me. Peace. Not the false peace of silence and endurance, but the real kind. The peace that comes from boundaries, from knowing where you end and where others begin. And yet I didn't hate my sister. She lost her power, yes. She lost the control she clung to like oxygen. But in the end, I realized her downfall wasn't my victory. It was her consequence. My victory was walking away stronger, whole, unshaken. One evening, months later, I passed by the old house on my way home. Lights glowed in the windows, but I didn't feel the old ache. I smiled, almost sadly, and whispered to myself, "That chapter's closed." Because this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. If you've made it this far, let me ask you something. Have you ever faced favoritism, betrayal, or someone abusing power against you? Maybe it wasn't about a house, maybe it wasn't family, but you know that sting of being dismissed, erased, or silenced. What did you do? Or, what do you wish you had done? Share it below. Because the truth is, stories like this aren't rare. They're everywhere. And when we tell them out loud, we remind each other that we're not alone. In the end, here's what I learned. Worth isn't something they give you. It's something you claim for yourself. And once you claim it, no one can take it away.